morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what part of the globe you're on. I know for people in India, Far East, your day is far gone, you're probably sleeping. For brothers in Africa, well, it's about bedtime. For people in America, I'm sure Canada, America, some are just getting home from work. So hence, I always say good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on what part of the globe or the planet you're on. Welcome to the second episode of Atlanta Discuss on YouTube. Now we're mixing sight and sound. Today we're going to talk about Africa. We're talking about Africa, the past, the present, and the future. And trust me, I've brought two erudite scholars, fantastic guys. I've known them. They've always been part of Atlanta Discuss. These guys know their onions. They are well-bred. You'll find out yourself the way things are going. But you all know the way we do it at Atlanta Discuss. We disseminate positive news always in a world filled with a lot of bad news. That means that even if the news is not good for you, it's always the fact. We try and combine the best of all races to get the best out of mankind. We bridge the gap in information dissemination, and we just go for the facts. That's all. We look at IT, sports, history, faith-based issues. We never mortgage it. We just go for the jugular always. And that's what our listeners want. 2 years down the line in audio, now we are doing visual with it. Today, I have two of my very good friends and brothers with us. Let me start with Adejuwon Anjorin, my main man. Adejuwon, welcome to Atlanta Discuss.
Thank you very much for having me, Mr. Diolu.
Yes, thank you. Now, the other man we have is my good friend and brother too, Peter Ogurike. Peter, how you doing, man? Did I call your name well? Because I always say Peter, Chikpe.
You did well.
All right, thank you, my brother. So, let me start with Peter now. Let me introduce my guest to you so that you know what they're made of. Peter Ogurike is an alumni of the Texas A&A University, where he graduated from business. Yeah, A&M. Yeah, sorry about that. Texas A&M University, where he graduated from business school and is currently pursuing a second master's in cybersecurity and policy at the Texas A&M Law School. He resides in the Houston area. Peter is a finance professional who currently holds the SAP certification with expertise in FP&A, SAP, and XP&A. Financial consolidation for corporate organization, project implementation and customization, business process improvement, just to mention a few. He also has a partnership with Focus on Financial Services. He is an entrepreneur, businessman, father, and husband. Peter likes to speak for the downtrodden, likes to lend a helping hand where necessary. At his spare time, he cycles with his friend, he goes snowboarding in line with skating and indulging in Texas preferred sporting events. That tells you Peter lives in Texas, specifically Houston. Peter Ogurike, welcome to Atlanta Discuss.
Thank you very much.
Good. Now, my main man, J1, Adejuwon Anjorin, is a social commentator and public affairs analyst, deeply passionate about the development of Africa and the African diaspora. Over the past 2 decades, he has actively engaged in various forums as an activist, volunteer, and contributor to causes focused on improving the lives of African children. Adejuwon's impactful writing, with opinion pieces and essays published in different print media outlets, aims to raise awareness, spark discussion on pertinent issues related to Africa. Alongside his advocacy work, he has built a successful career in information technology, holding various leadership positions in different U.S. government agencies, currently residing in Atlanta, Georgia. Adejuwon shares his journey with his family while continuing his journey to promote positive change for Africa and its people. Now tell me, if the topic is Africa, past, present, and future, who else do we need but Peter and Adejuwon? Guys, welcome to Atlanta Discuss. Okay, so the way we do it, we don't waste time. We just go for the jugular straight, man. We don't waste time, especially when we have erudite scholars like you in the house. So let me start with you, Adejuwon. How do you rate the situation of post-colonial Africa? Because it does look like we're not doing too well. The majority of African countries got their independence around the 1960s, 61, 62, 63. But how do you rate the situation in post-colonial Africa?
Thank you again, Mr. Diolu, for bringing me onto this program. I think this discussion is very, very pertinent, it's very timely. I think that Africa's children, when I say Africa's children, I mean Africans all over the world, including continental Africans, African Americans, and Africans in the diaspora, all Black people everywhere. How do I rate the situation of post-colonial Africa? I think the truth stares us all in the face. The first African country to get its independence was Ghana, 1957, and then afterward followed by Nigeria in 1960, and then through the 60s and the 70s up till 1990 when apartheid fell in South Africa. When you look at the statistics, the economic statistics, the development statistics of Africa today, I think we can say that Africa has not lived up to its potential. When Nigeria got its independence in 1960, the US president, who was reported at the time that he had told members of his team that Nigeria was going to be a world power within 20 years. We have not fulfilled that promise. We have receded due to a combination of factors. You know, and I know that countries like South Korea and Malaysia, even United Arab Emirates, these were countries, Brazil, these were countries that were like peer countries, if you will, who got their independence at about the same time. Some of them were even behind us at the time. But today, they are way ahead of us in terms of economy, in terms of stability, in terms of development, and every different growth statistics. The situation post-colonial Africa is not, we can take a positive outlook towards it, but the fact of the matter is that it's not so great. We're still over 600 million Africans don't have electricity as we speak today. That's over 50% of Africa's population. Our infrastructure is decadent. Our economy is weak. Our leaders are in a state of comatose sleepiness, still fighting for power at desperate costs. We don't want to go into the healthcare statistics. We don't want to go into education. We don't want to go into the second transatlantic slavery that we are calling Japa now, and the number of our children that are perishing in the Mediterranean Ocean trying to get into Europe to pursue a dream that doesn't exist. So, Mr. Adeolu, I think that part of the discussions that I hope we'll have today is acknowledging where we are, and then together as Sons of Africa begin to channel our energies and discussion to steer the continent back on the right track.
So in a nutshell, you don't think the situation post-colonial Africa is anything to write home about right now?
Absolutely not. I think if you look at our home country, Nigeria, for instance, the state of our development between 1960 and 1965 before the war is way ahead of where we are right now. If you look at the exchange rate of our currency, for instance, our currency was more valuable than the dollar at the time. What is it today? $1 to 800 naira, £1 to 1,100 naira. Just look at what it is today. At the time when Nigerians came to study in the UK or to study in America, they went straight back home because there are jobs waiting, there was security. But what do we have now? Everybody's running away, even to countries like Cyprus that are not up to my home state, not up to Osun State. So yes, things could be better. I don't think that post-colonial Africa has lived up to the expectation of the founding fathers.
Peter, how do you rate the situation of post-colonial Africa today, 1960 to today?
That's a loaded question, I must say, because where do you start, right? Let me put it this way. I mean, J1 has said everything, but I'll try to keep it simple. Who do you blame? Because those of us in the West, those of us in the diaspora, those of us that are fortunate enough to be educated, those of us that are heavily into research, those of us that are still in tune with, history, and have the drive to find out or sort out the truth, right? You find out a lot of things that make you wonder, right? Bottom line is, if I should rate it, of course, we know we're all going to be disappointed. That's the rating. It's a disappointing rating. I'm not going to put it on a scale. But when you think about it, I guess it comes to the second question, is the reason why is that happening? Because when you analyze the world today, you analyze the strength of the world powers. There is no West without Africa, be it technology. We're talking about world powers. Everybody's talking about weaponizing the world and all that. Where are the raw materials coming from? So when you sit down, and then let me try and make it simple, like the layman's way of understanding things, is how do you not know the value of what you have?
Bingo.
Despite the awareness, despite people telling you the value of what you have. There's a saying, I was chatting up with a friend some time ago, and it's like, it says, if you're on a table making a deal and you look around everybody seated on that table and you're not able to spot the sucker, then you know you're the one. You look at Nigeria, for example, the giant of Africa when we're growing up, right? You go as far back as independence. You look at the wealth. Now, some people might want to say, okay, well, you go into all that history and different thought process of what happened and what didn't happen, right? But irrespective of that, you don't shoot yourself in the foot because you are not in harmony with your brother or your sister. It makes no sense. I grew up in the northern part of Nigeria. I like to say I'm a true representative of Nigeria. In my family, we have the Igbos, the Yorubas, the Nupes, we're talking about Borno, Germans, we have Italians. This is my Ogrike's bloodline now, I'm telling you. So my family, for example, I can say it's not the traditional family that where people will say, okay, well, you're probably messed up here because of a particular belief and you're pigeonholed in the way you think. My parents have always had us think outside the box and ask questions why. So now back to Africa, and I'll go down to Nigeria and then further go down to the States. You look at Africa, everybody likes to put what they don't understand in the box and then give it a name. Let's go down to the States. Be you Igbo, Hausa, Yoruba, whatever tribe you are. You look at your governors, for example, and then you ask yourself, okay, if the center, if it's the Igbo man, or if it's the Yoruba man, or if it's the Hausa man, call it the North, South, West. That is my true enemy. Why is it that my brother who is in the state house isn't doing what he's supposed to do? So now you find out that it's not necessarily the North, South, Southwest, Southeast, or whatever name you want to give. That is a problem. I think it's a human behavior. So I have friends.
Sorry to interject you. So are you saying we cannot blame it on colonialism?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
Colonialism has a role, but if I come to you, Ade, right?
Yeah.
And you have $20, and I say, hey, Ade, can you help me with $20? And then you say, okay, yeah, fine. There goes your $20. Then you come back to me and I say, hey, Peter, you know what? Can I get $10 from my $20? And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll give it to you, but I'm going to give it to you at an interest of 10%, 20%, whatever the interest rate. What's the first thing that comes to mind? It's your money, right? Mm-hmm. Why should you now pay me to get your money back? And if you're smart enough to say, oh yeah, that's fine. I'll take the $10 and I'll give you 10% back. People say business is booming. Yeah, business is booming when you're outsmarting the other person, right? It depends on what your markup is or whatever. But it comes down to common sense. People are sitting at this table and making negotiations. Leadership is not so much about micromanagement. Leadership is not so much about it has to be me, it has to be what I say that. But you see, we're now dealing with culture. As a leader, you want to have the right team in place to succeed, but you have to have a vision. If you lack the vision, then you're not a leader. Okay,
let's look at it this way. Yeah, we agree the situation is bad, where Africa as a continent is behind schedule. We have stunted growth. Things are not working well. Africa is behind. Africa has all the resources known to man. I can tell you categorically, Congo, former Zaire, probably has all resources known to man. Almost every resource. We did a check. Possibly, if I'm wrong, maybe 95% of the entire resources we can ever get on Earth. So now this stunted growth, this maladministration, these deficits we have in Africa. Now, Peter, I put it to you. What do you think is the fundamental reason why? Because if we look at colonization, for example, India was also colonized by Britain. Mm-hmm. Today, India is a nuclear superpower. India embraced the best of British culture. They didn't lose focus of theirs. They never did. Indians wear Indian clothes. India is a nuclear superpower. By August of this year, India is going to be the most populous country in the world, more than China. As of 7 years ago, malaria was killing people in India. India is over 1 billion people. Now, Nigeria, for example, is about 200 million. But there are more poor people in Nigeria than you have in India. That, to me, beats my imagination. I can't even wriggle my head around it. So my question is, why do we have this stunted growth in Africa? Why is it so difficult for us to get it right? Why? Is it leadership? Is it tribe? Because the India I told you about is multi-ethnic, multi-diverse, multi-religious. Just think of it. Think country like Nigeria take to be a minus or a disadvantage. In India is a plus. So where really is the problem for this stunted growth, Peter?
And I'll tell you, it's simply the loss of culture and identity. You see, there's even a study that shows that the loss of cultural practices, can lead to reduce social cohesion and society-wide mental health challenges. People are trying to redefine their culture. I was in Austin over the weekend, and my cousin had some friends over, some guys, a couple from Zimbabwe, another one from Benin. And then we had some Caucasian friends there as well. And then the normal, who has the best jollof rice argument came up. Of course, I said, Nigeria has the best jollof. And then the guy from Benin says, no, it's not Nigeria. And then as usual, we went all over the place. And then he now says, okay, but why would Nigeria say they own the best jollof? When jollof is traditional, traditionally, the origin of jollof is, he said, Senegal. Did you know that?
Yeah, I do.
I do.
And he says, but Nigeria and Ghana like to make the noise about who is the best. So while we're talking, and then he made a statement that kind of drew my attention. He says, look, let's forget about, and I quote, he says, let's forget about the map they drew to separate us. We were all one region before colonialism came in. He says there's a part of Benin that speaks Yoruba, right?
Very true.
You go to the other part of the border, but I think with Ghana also, they speak the same language. And then I think, was it Togo or so? He's like, when you actually, so now he's not giving me Benin, the history. And he says, this whole separation, that, okay, well, you're there, you guys own this region, has messed up the continent. So now, so the question is, okay, well, what do you do when life as you know it and culture as you know it has been changed to where you're okay, well, hey, your brother is no longer your brother. Normal human instincts, survival instincts kicks in. So it's not us versus them. That's the mindset. Now, I become suspicious of you, you become suspicious of me in our dealings. Forgetting that once upon a time, we were brothers and sisters.
Yeah, but you can blame that on colonialism.
Yes, you can blame that on colonialism, right? But at the same time, the West was colonized. If you say, okay, well, there are so many nations that have been colonized one way or the other, but you tell yourself, okay, well, blame it on, no. Look at the other guys that were colonized. Are they having it as bad as Africa? No. So it's actually, in this case, your second question, you can say, okay, yes, you can put your hand and say, okay, well, who stands to benefit from the chaos? Africans sabotage to create a reason for further manipulations or for the sole purpose of control and exploit by the colonized. And then you say, okay, well, yeah, that's going to make sense, yeah, because they want to like exploit us some more and all that. But in the words of our uncle, Charlie Boy, our mumu never do. Sometimes you get what year is this? We still argue and justify things as though we're deprived of information and education and as if we're living in the dark ages. But again, I mean, you can see the kind of chat and communications we have anyways, as of yesterday. And you listen to the way some people are arguing and the points, and then you start wondering, okay,
it's unbelievable.
What's the disconnect, right? So let's even start in our backyard before we even go further out. It's human behavior, exposure, and some inherent information being programmed in our subconscious. And for some of us that we're not able to reprogram ourselves. And then, of course, you see bad things go further than good things, right? So you're going to have people that are stuck in their old ways and their normal human behavior. If you're trying to tell them, oh, well, this is the right thing to do. And just because it's coming from you and I don't necessarily like you, then I'm going to tell you, who are you to tell me the right thing?
I'll tell you something, yeah. The good thing in Atlanta Discourse, I also have an opinion. So I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give you another. I like where you're going, so I love it. Now, one of the things we try and do here is that, we try and bridge the gap between the developing and the developed world. We just go straight to the fact. So I'm going to Adejuwa and Jory now. Adejuwa, what is your reason for the stunted growth in Africa? Why is Africa behind schedule? Why are we at the receiving end? Is it self-inflicted? Are we inherently dishonest people? Is it colonialism? What do you think, Adejuwa?
So thank you again. I was following Peter's thoughts, and there's a number of things that he mentioned that I'm just going to piggy off of. In my opinion, from studying Africa over the past 35 years, just profiling Africa, studying the countries and the people, the characters, and colonialism, pre-colonialism, and history, I make bold to say that Africa's challenges started way before colonialism. As a people, we have certain inherent vulnerabilities that made us very, very, very vulnerable to colonialism, and has made it very, very hard for us to recover when other colonized regions have recovered. I call it the Mansa Musa tragedy, or the Mansa Musa phenomenon. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the story of Mansa Musa.
I know Mansa Musa of Mali.
Mansa Musa was the monarch of the Malian Empire in the 1300s. This is way before colonialism. And a lot of Black people, especially in the West, romanticized the history of Mansa Musa, because what this gentleman did was to take the wealth of his empire, large bags of gold and diamond and all the resources of Africa, put them on horses, and he made a trip all the way to Mecca. And he was going through to Mecca from Mali and all these countries. Everywhere he stopped, he would give them gifts all the way to Mali. I think his grandfather made a trip to the Americas and did the same thing. So what these two monarchs did was to go out into the world and announce to the world what the wealth of Africa was. And to what Peter said earlier, he said, how do you not know what you have? Not only did he go out there to tell them where I come from, this is what we have, it's like sand. Because he didn't go to trade. Mansa Musa didn't go to trade. He didn't bring anything back home. All he went to do was to showboat. And I'm sorry, my opinion is going to offend a lot of Black people, because we come from the wealthiest. Mansa Musa went all over the world and gave people all of these things. Africa is wealthy. Yes, Africa is wealthy. The land is wealthy. We have everything. DR Congo has nearly everything that should make a world power like Wakanda, in the fictitious Wakanda. But what is the mindset? That's why I call it the Mansa Musa tragedy. So what we are seeing right now in capital flight and corruption, after the Europeans came for 400 years and looted us, and then our own leaders, our own African leaders, are doing the same. They are cutting away our resources, shipping them in capital flights to other places, to develop other places while our land is impoverished. It didn't start today. It didn't start with colonialism. It was already inside us as Black people. So this gentleman took all this wealth out, gave it to all these people, and when they saw that, wow, where is this place? Where is it coming from? In less than 200 years, Africans were being enslaved to the Arabians and to the Americas. So in short, in essence, it is almost as if we invited the goons to come and invade us. Permit me to use a religious analogy to that. There's a story in the Bible where the king of Babylon, went to another kingdom to say hello. And the king of that kingdom welcomed the king of Babylon and his people. And he showed them everything in his kingdom, everything, where the gold was, where the brass was, where the garden, where the fruits were, and everything. And it was like a state visit. There's nothing he didn't show them. And then the king of Babylon went back. And when the king of Babylon went back, the prophet came to the king and said, who are those guys that came? He said it was Babylonian people that came, the king and his contingent. So what did you show them? He said, I showed them everything in my kingdom. There's nothing left in this kingdom I didn't show them. So the prophet told him, you know what? As you have showed them everything, that is how they will come back and take everything, and you and your sons will be enslaved for generations. So the reason why I call it the Mansa Musa tragedy is because we are a people who don't know the value of what we have. We have never known the value of what we have. And that is why when the goons came in the 1500s and landed on the shores of Africa, they were able to so easily penetrate us. They were able to so easily sell us. They were so easily capture our land. They were able to so easily divide and conquer us. And it was so easy for them to raise up these strongmen, the strongman mentality, which is why I have serious issues with our current president. The strongman mentality, that is what the colonizers did. Just raise up one powerful man who will go into the hinterland, capture slaves, get cocoa and everything. They will enrich him. He will enrich a few soldiers, black soldiers like himself, who will help him perpetrate the wishes of the colonizers. This is who we are. This is the brutal fact of our history and our profile as a people. So my position is that, yes, colonialism came and did a lot of damage, but we were already very open to it. We were already very weak. We have never really thought in terms of the global forces, how the global forces operate. Until today, I see many Africans fighting the West. Oh, it's the fault of the West. All countries, there is no altruism when countries are playing with each other. There is no free lunch when countries are playing with each other. Let me ask a question. How could the West colonize us for centuries? And our ancestors fought tooth and nail to get independence. And after independence, the same West set up all of these institutions, and then they will recommend to you how you are going to develop. And you believed that the IMF and the World Bank would give you loans. The same people that have looted you, that have carted away your resources and your children. How gullible can you be? How vulnerable can you be?
Let me interject you. We still have like 3 more questions, before we go to the final one. Let me tell you, I also have an opinion. One of the reasons why we do this at Atlantic Discourse, bring the intellectual scholars to tell us what. I know you guys read a lot. I don't know if you've read about Shaka Zulu, because we were talking about Mansa Musa. Shaka was even king during colonialism. And if you read Shaka, you see how even the British, instead of first attacking him, they sent an expeditionary force, you understand, to get familiar with him. They saw his weakness. And for some reason they exploited it. But I've read part of it. I've not finished the book, but from the movie, what I realized is that they gave him a music box. His white hair was dyed black. So there was an assassination attempt that he survived because the white man, it was just a spear, not a gunshot. They healed him, and he felt that, wow, he can come back to life from the dead. What I'm saying this is that I'm trying to buttress your initial point that we're inherently like that. You understand? We are built to be the boss. We want to. For God's sake, if you look at slavery, Jaja, Opobo, and everybody sold their people to nobody just came to pick slaves like that. Those slaves were sold by their kith and kin. However, my final point on that stunted group and all that, I'm not going to remove colonialism. I'm not going to give them that. I'm not going to absolve them in all entirety. Because I do know in my own personal research, I know that in West Africa, for example, if you put like where Zaria is in Nigeria, and you rule a perpendicular line across Cameroon all the way to the Gambia, you discover that everything above that ruler, above that perpendicular line is Islamic. Is Islamic in nature. Everything beneath that line is Christianity. The only semblance of Islam beneath that perpendicular line are the Yorubas of Benin Republic and southwestern Nigeria. So, for example, Zimbabwe, there are 2 ethnic groups, Shona and Ndebele. You understand? That is why managing the Zimbabwean politics is not particularly very difficult. But for a multi-ethnic Nigeria, I don't think in Nigeria, for example, should be the way it is. Because if you look at Benin Republic, northern Benin, like I wrote that perpendicular line. Above that line, you have Natigungu, you have Parapu, you have Malambia, all Islamic enclave. Same thing northern Togo, same thing northern Ghana, Tamale and the rest. So I think, yes, we have those inherent issues. I think the colonialists saw it, and they played it to it. But if you look at the Indian story, I tried narrating up initially. From India, Pakistan broke out, and subsequently Bangladesh. Yeah, and with my little knowledge of Nkrumah, Bogwiba, Sekotura, and the rest, you see that even though they were all nationalists and they fought for this and that, but when they all had power, back to what you said, they all abused it one way or the other. And the white man saw that these guys, the only language they understand is force. To put somebody there. For God's sake, how did the Bokassa and the Mobutu emerge in the first instance? And Idi Amin, in a nation, in any society that is merit-based, those guys would not even meet any benchmark. And that's just the truth of the matter. But yeah, Adejo, I'll stay with you for this one. What needs to be done going forward to change the African trajectory? It's looking like we might not come out of it. when you have, I mean, let's look at Nigeria, South
That's a very
Africa, for
pessimistic
example.
outlook.
Yeah, let's look at South Africa. You know, they just got independence. Everybody fought for them. Mandela did everything. It's late now. Now, while the white man were there, there was electricity. Now they take power in South Africa. Is it that we're inherently incompetent too? Nigeria is even a basket case. You know, 1 out of every 4 sub-Saharan African is a Nigerian. 1 out of every 6 black men in the world is a Nigerian. Nigeria is not arguable. Nigeria is the largest concentration of black people in the world. Nigeria is a shock to the system. And like one of the former president of Nigeria said recently, we have disappointed everybody. So what's the way forward? You know, because even the democracy doesn't look like we know how to practice it. What do you think should be done if there is to be hope at all?
So I'm going to start at the macro level. I'm not going to get into policies like, you know, okay. we need power, we need railway, we need hospitals. Yes, for me, that's the easy part. That's copy and paste. Many countries, Dubai, I think UAE was built in less than 40 years. It's cut and paste. So we don't need to. I'm not going to dwell too much on that. I'm going to dwell on what appears to be the conceptual, because I think that's really where the solution is. Yes, colonization is a problem. We do need to be decolonized in our minds. Yes, we need mind decolonization in Africa. We need a thinking system, a value system that is truly African, that is built on honor. You mentioned honor earlier. That's built on honesty, that's built on character. It's a lack of character. That is why people like Mobutu agreed to the assassination of Patrice Lumumba. It's a lack of character. It's a lack of honor. That is why, what's the name of the guy that killed Sankara in Burkina Faso?
Blaise
Compaoré. It's shallowness of character that a Western power will instigate you against your brother that you grew up in the same house, who's building your country. If you look at the way African countries have been affected by the powers that be, since independence, they haven't sent their soldiers to the ground. They have used blacks against Africans, because a lot of Africans don't think at a very high level. Fela Kuti, I'll quote Fela Kuti, one of his songs. He said, he gets one style with them they use. Them go get one African man, a man of low mentality, to become of high position here. Yes, this is the thing. That's why I said it's conceptual. It's from the mind, the way we think, the things we value. So that man of low mentality, and he's a man of low mentality because he's easily bought to work against the interest of his own people. So we need to be decolonized in our mind. That's number one. That's a discussion on its own. Then second, we need unity. It's part of the decolonization. Don't forget that the countries we have today, like you all have mentioned, Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, they are all creations of the Berlin Conference of 1884. And when they were created, they were not created for the interest of Africans or even with the participation of Africans or with the acceptance of Africans. They were created as administrative units for Western powers to be able to loot properly, to prevent them from fighting over the looting of people and natural resources. That is what these countries are. And Africa has struggled because of these fake entities that we created. Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah was one who started to call for the unification of Africa, to have one currency. Look at what we're talking about, David Hundeyin. Look at what happened to David Hundeyin in Zimbabwe. I was on a Twitter space last week when young Africans came out lamenting, very, very angry about what happened to David Hundeyin. And each one of them began to tell their own versions. A Nigerian lady told us that she went to Kenya. She was humiliated at Kenya because of some, I don't know what paper it was. And they detained her for hours, put her on a plane and sent her back to Nigeria. No African countries would do that to any Caucasian, to any European.
No, exactly.
A gentleman told us that he flew from Abuja to Douala in Cameroon It cost him over $1,000.
Wow.
Exactly. Why? A flight of less than 1 hour. Because of all these contraptions that we call countries that can't really stand the test of time when it comes to real issues. So we need unity of purpose. There are two voices that I'm going to mention that Africa needs to start listening to. One of them is Professor Dr. Arikana Chombori Kwe. She was the former African Union ambassador to the US. They call her Mama Africa. She has been speaking about this issue for years now. Africa needs to listen to that woman. The second person is Professor PLO Lumumba. He's been screaming it. He's been to almost every country. Matter of fact, he went to one of the countries, Tanzania, and the Chinese deported him from Tanzania. You see, the African problem, when I think about it sometimes, just blows my mind. Just how vulnerable and gullible we can be. How greedy and selfish our leaders can be, and their inability to see the larger picture, the big picture. So, in my opinion, those are the two things that I'm going to stay on. Right. Decolonizing our mind, unifying our purpose as a continent, as a people, and removing all these fake borders, economically, socially, and politically, and forming India. You talk about India. India is more populous than us, and they are one country. They speak one purpose. If Africa was one country, our GDP is over $2.3 trillion. We can negotiate better than Djibouti can or Zimbabwe can with any one of these world powers. So I'll just stay there so that Mr. Peter can also,
Yeah, let me go to Peter. Peter, do you agree with decolonization? I mean, with all these dictators we have everywhere, our elections don't matter, our elections don't count. I mean, I know Botswana is doing its best. Botswana is a country we're all proud of. But if you look at it now, the followership is equally as laid back as the leadership, because we've seen so many examples of people claiming to be human rights activists that have been supported in the past that we look up to them. And for some reason, some of them get to power and they end up being worse than the people they fought against. So, Peter, what is the way forward? Is there really hope for Africa?
Oh, yes, there is hope. And I see Africa.
A lot of hope, or just a figment of hope?
A massive amount of hope, right? So it's only going to manifest when the people decide to do right by themselves. In a nutshell, what John was saying, we need a mindset overhaul. But when you actually look at how do you brainwash people, when you're being told you're nothing, when you're being told it's impossible, and the environment around you confirms that it's impossible, you grow up not knowing that there's a possibility out of difficulties in life. And now, if that's all you don't know what you don't know. Right? So a mindset overhaul is crucial. I mean, the Bible says the heart of man is deceitful and above all desperately wicked, right? We can't just blame everything on colonization. Right? Yes, we can say it has. Whatever is going on in Africa is rooted from colonization, fine. And then with the West, coming around and creating the impression of assisting in state building, forming economic and military systems, but it's all about control and making sure that their interest is catered for. But again, the overhaul of the mindset of Africans, because when you look at it in the West, let's take Nigeria for example. We have so many successful Nigerians overseas in the diaspora. You go to corporate America, you go to the medical field, you go to financials, wherever you go, you see, and we're well read. We're doing all these things we do outside of Nigeria, for example, and we're good at it, right? What happens if you replicate the same? You see, Nigeria's problem or Africa's problem is not so much about do they have the capability or the capacity. It's the mindset of the people. Because when you look at the people causing these problems, I'll say it's less than 1%. Everybody goes in. Let's use our current president, for example. People like to praise and say you're the kingmaker, you're the this, you're the that. And if you look at the format across Africa, it's the same. Mm-hmm. People go in, surround themselves with loyalists, all with the focus of us and not our people. Now, the people are being given handouts. Some of the people are given handouts. And then you're praising the person oppressing you. Look at the percentage of those being oppressed and the oppressor. If you look at it, if you think about it this way, let's say majority of the oppressed have a change in mindset. Trust me, these guys are not going to be doing what they're doing. People are going to be held accountable. But again, when you look at evolution, the way we grew up, the right, wrong that we were taught, that doesn't exist anymore. Because all we see now and we complain about, they said the children are the future generation, right? Now, the children of Gen Zs and backwards, all they see or have experienced is what's going on now.
Decadence.
And that's the norm to them. So you're going to come from our generation and you say, oh no, you have to do it with this way. This is the right way. They can't relate to what we're saying because they never lived it, they never experienced it.
Where do you see the hope if the future generations are already derailed?
Yeah, so I'll tell you where the hope is coming from. It takes, look at Singapore, for example, right?
Okay.
That's the vision of 5 people. You see, the thing with Africans is, or Nigerians, let me put it that way, is nobody wants to die, but everybody wants to go to heaven. But you have to die before you go to heaven, right? Nobody wants to lead the way.
Yeah.
And when you look at it, some people will say, okay, well, should I just go and die for nothing? Because those behind. But again, if you believe in a cause to change the life, I look at it this way, it's still human behavior. Yes, the new generation now see all the negativity as the norm. Just like that child in school who does not want to settle down and study until the light bulb comes on, and then they change all of a sudden. It takes those who know the right from the wrong to say, propagate, and educate people and show examples. But whenever there's light, darkness cannot compete. That's just the truth. So no matter how small the change is, it starts from you and me. So that's why I say there is hope, because people cannot just be suffering forever. They'll get to a point, normal human behavior, you're going to get to a point where you're fed up. And at that point, that's the breaking point. And trust me, Nigeria is getting there. People are
I was going to say that, because that's my final question.
Very close.
Very close. So now, two of you, I'm giving you 2 minutes to let's do Nigeria now. Because I know you're of Nigerian origin. I know you're following the political events back in Nigeria. I know things are not looking good. We'll be lying to ourselves. So part of my question and part of the issues I want you to deliberate on is, what are your predictions for the future? I know if Nigeria gets it well, Africa will definitely get it. I'm 100% sure about that. So what do you see? Adejuwon, let me start with you. Your crystal ball, this angle of prism you're sitting, looking at it, your crystal ball from every angle. What does the future hold for the nation with the largest concentration of Black people in the world? What do you see? Failed election. Of course, that election is a sham. Anybody that lay credence to that election is speaking a lot of gibberish. It's overwhelmingly 350 billion naira down the drain. It's just so unfortunate. But what do you see? What do you foresee going forward? That's your last question. And your parting shot to our viewers.
Yes, real quick. I'm going to try and squeeze my parting short because there's something I need to say and I want to say before I leave. But to answer your question, bros, there is hope. I don't want to sound all totally pessimistic because we've dealt with the past and what we believe are the root issues that we have. As of today, 7 of the top 20 fastest growing economies in the world are in Africa. As of today, we have a digital revolution going on in South Africa, Nigeria, and Egypt. We have big infrastructure projects being developed. The Dangote refineries in Nigeria. There's a particular dam being built in Ethiopia that's going to generate about 5 gigawatts of electricity for that region. So there is hope. The frustration that we are seeing is because it's coming too slow. Like the development is too slow compared with the amount of investment that nature or God has given into us. I have confidence in the African youth, and I'm not going to, at the risk of sounding stupid, what is going on right now in Africa's cultural scene, the emergence of Afrobeats and Nollywood, and the global dominance of our culture and arts is indicative to me that the light at the end of the tunnel is not so far anymore. When I was growing up, we didn't see this kind of thing where an African artist dominates the world. It didn't exist. But today, the African youth can look at the global scene and can see himself in the picture. Through Burna Boy, he can see himself. The only thing we saw there was Michael Jackson performing James Bond. But today, we see our images. The world is copying off our culture now. So I truly believe that will replicate itself in other sectors of development that Africa needs. Like what Peter just mentioned, if you know better, you see better. The current wave of Japa, where a lot of Nigerians are living, they are going to learn, they are going to get exposure, and they're going to get a new mindset. And there's going to be a time that will come, like it happened to the Jews and the state of Israel, even though it took a long time, when there's going to be a massive return, either willingly or by force. But there's going to be a massive return of Africa's children whose minds have been changed, that you can no longer lie to or trick. They will instigate the necessary revolution that Africa needs. I'll say this: the independence movement of African countries started when Nnamdi Azikiwe and Kwame Nkrumah met at the University of Pennsylvania in the 1920s. They were students there at the same time. Yes, they were the same sorority together. They learned through the American rebellion against the British Crown that they needed to go back home and begin to challenge the colonial masters. And that is why in the 60s, we began to have our independence, and Azikiwe became the first president of Nigeria, Nkrumah became the first president of Ghana. So there is light at the end of the tunnel. I have confidence in the African youth that did the Arab Spring, that toppled about 4 dictators. I have confidence in the African youth like David Hundeyin and his people of the EndSARS movement, who have powered a small political party like Labour Party in less than a year to national prominence, to the point that Nigeria is about to see the first time a president might be unseated in our history, powered by young people. So I have confidence in that. My real parting shot when it comes to Africa, and I didn't realize that Peter will be here. So what I'm about to say is not because Peter is here. I have held this opinion for a very long time, that one of the things that Africa needs to break through is locked up in Nigeria, and that is the Igbo people. That is why I have a passion for the Igbo people. If Africa will ever develop technologically, if we are going to build our own bridges, so that we don't need China to build the OAU headquarters in Addis Ababa and install cameras and bugs, listening to everything and backdoors, channeling all Africa's data to China. If we are going to stop that nonsense, if we are going to build our own bridges, our own airplanes, our own submachine guns, our naval fleets, God has put that gift in the Igbo people of Nigeria. Just naturally, genetically talented for technology. But Nigeria has not given that region breathing space to flourish. So my parting shot is everybody is peculiar in their own ways, but Nigeria needs to answer the Igbo question. Among all the questions that we have as a country, we need to answer the Igbo question. We need to let the people flourish. Yes, they may be outspoken, proud culture, all of that, but in them is a key part of Nigeria's breakthrough and Africa's breakthrough. That will be my parting shot.
Quick question. Do you think the court will overturn the victory of Bola Tinubu in Nigeria? Yes or no?
I hope so.
You hope so? That's a yes. All right. Peter, so, I really want to hear you. Parting shot. What do you see from your crystal ball? Peter is a patriot like Adejuwa. They are both patriots. I've known them for a while. We discuss every day. We have a WhatsApp with all of us, and we all want a better Africa. And Peter, what do you see? What do you see? Is it good? Is it bad? I mean, even if it's good, do you think it's going to cost some? I mean, I know freedom comes with some price, Power is not served a la carte, like they say. But what do you see going forward? Nigeria, Africa, specifically Nigeria.
Well, I mean, in Nigeria, I see great potential and I see light at the end of the tunnel. But if they will give the right people the opportunity to steer the country in the right direction. You see, we talk about all these big ideas. For me, let's go down to the grassroots, to the common man and woman, the families in the villages, in the rural areas that cannot find food to feed a day, 2, 3. And even if they find, it's just some miserable meal just to stuff their stomach, to quench that feel of hunger. And then that leads to malnutrition. If we can have leaders that have the interest of their people at heart, that's it for me. You see, all these whole nice ideas, what use is a wonderful nation that has the best economy, that has the best GDP and all whatnot, but your citizens, the masses, are dying of hunger. It's useless. All you're doing is like that fellow who cleans up, comes out in public and make themselves look good. But back home, they don't care for their family or their kids. Charity, they say, begins at home. For me, it's because I get this call from Nigeria. People that are supposedly successful or making it are complaining bitterly, asking for help, financial help, desperately, right? Now, you think about it, and then you go further a step below that category of people and further down. What's the faith of the guy at the very bottom? It's when you think about it, and then that's why sometimes when we have these discussions with fellow Nigerians, everybody likes to talk up there. I'm like, there are things will solve itself. Feed your citizens. Once your citizens are fed, people are going to have the mindset to think outside the box. You cannot be a genius. You cannot think of things you're talking about going to the moon when you can't even feed your household. I mean, as a human, all you're thinking first is shelter, food, and providing for your immediate family.
Basics.
The rest is extras, right? Yeah. So I see, if Nigeria has the right team, you see all this how many years of horrible leadership, if Nigeria has the right team in place, Nigeria can turn around in less than 10 years and you'll be amazed. But will the powers that be allow the right people to do what they have to do? Will the fellow citizens have the right mindset to know when they're being manipulated and when they're being played?
Let me ask you a straightforward question. Go ahead, finish your point before I ask you a straightforward question.
And it would be nice for once if people can stop thinking about themselves. Because everybody is all about me, what I can grab and all that. And then when you talk to them and they're like, okay, well, if X and X is doing it, why should I be the one to change it? We're all going to go. We're just journeying. We're just on a journey through this world. We're not going to live with one thing. And some might say, oh, you're living for your children or your generations to come. Ill-gotten wealth is going to evaporate.
Mm-hmm.
And the people you're suffering and oppressing, the kind of prayers that is being mounted on your head and your family and generations to come, people don't understand these things. So in other words, whatever you think you're doing and you think you're being successful is just a waste. Because you cannot be successful at the expense and lives of other humans like you. You cannot wish your kids success in life at the expense of other kids like them.
Science.
I mean, sometimes when people think, I hear them speak, it just baffles me.
So now my straightforward question to you, do you think religion, even though most of these religions are not ours, Christianity came from colonialists, Islam too, not from colonialists, but was imported now. Do you think religion, this is a yes or no, do you think religion has a role to play in how we reason so shabbily?
No.
No.
That's a resounding no. That's a tool that they use to separate. Okay. Yes.
So for our listeners, our watchers, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm sure you've all learned a lot today. But I will always want to add to this. Paul Kagame in Rwanda has shown that leadership can be positive in Africa. Anybody that is watching what's happening in Rwanda, Kagame, yes, is a dictator. Yes, Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore was a benevolent dictator too. Mahathir Mohamad in Malaysia was a benevolent dictator too. He was there for a long time. I mean, Suharto in Indonesia was a benevolent dictator. So I don't think, if Kagame is there for a long time, he's doing a lot. He's doing a lot. For a small country like that, on the map of the world, I've been watching a lot of swearing ceremonies from Turkey to so many parts of the world. Kagame is always there representing his country, networking and all that. So I think it can be done. My own observation in all this, especially for Nigerians, is that yes, we are almost the most educated migrating bloc to any country in the world. Maybe not all, but to most countries. Because you find Nigerians in Papua New Guinea, Auckland, New Zealand, all the way to Tahiti, Polynesia, name it. But it does occur to me that individually we do very well. The problem has always been collective. We do not do well collectively. I don't know whether to blame that on ethnic issues or that. So I'm an advocate of trying to get things done collectively, because it does seem to me that that's where the division comes. So we're going to call it a wrap there. That's the Atlanta Discuss, Africa, past, present, and the future. You will listen to my good brothers, Peter, Ogurikwe, and Adejunwa Anjorin. Guys, thank you for coming to Atlantic Discuss. This is our second episode on YouTube. I promise I'm going to bring you back. There's so many things to talk about, man, and the world needs to hear from you. So thank you, our dear listeners. Next week, Friday, over the weekend, we're going to be coming to you with another very interesting topic. We need to keep the chat continuous. We need to bridge the communication divide. We need to enlighten our people. Enough of we, me. We just have to do more of the collective. Thank you, guys. Thank you for coming. And I look forward to having you again. God bless you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.